Well, well.
Well.
Howdy.
I just was making excuse note such as sorry for the hiccup of our intro. It seemed to have a little at my end. Why you are looking so concerned, Thomas? Well,
At my end, it went smooth.
I'm just looking confused.
cool. Then I erase that comment. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, the one and only Ratul Shah on your screen. Yes, here he is. Ratul,
Man who's been everywhere.
to have you with us.
Hey, I'm
Thanks
glad to
for
be
joining.
here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, you say this not knowing what might approach you. Trust me, we are full of surprises, but positive ones.
No one's left the show crying yet.
No.
You'll be
And
able
we
to
don't
change that.
intend to do so. But the aspect is we love to share thoughts. And with some aspects in your career, you have serviced a lot of folks and ideas already.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share a bit with us which stations you have been enrolled before you joined SAP and you came to your actual role?
Yeah. So once again, thank you very much for having me today. It's always a pleasure to join such pundits in the industry to talk about customer experience and how data works. So I appreciate you allowing me to sit in this chair with you. My journey here, so we can start with the beginning. I am an engineer by trade, so I'm an electrical engineer. And of course, as every good Indian student, the first thing we do after we get our degree is we rebel. So I spent the first 7 years of my career working in sales. So I made my parents really happy to jump into sales. I transitioned into product management where I worked for some of those companies that you outlined, Exact Target, Interactive Intelligence, and Aprimo. And then most recently, I switched into the product marketing side of the house, where I was with an organization called Gigia, a leader in customer identity and access management. So all things data and data privacy. We were acquired by SAP, where I continued that charter. And then my team was fortunate enough to launch the customer data platform as part of the CX organization.
Wow. Cool stuff. And all that from Indianapolis.
All that from the home of the Indy 500. Absolutely.
Yeah. Not too bad.
Fantastic. And what is your actual role, Ratul?
So recently I transitioned into the head of cross-portfolio marketing at SAP. So it's a big word, a lot of titles there. To talk about what is SAP's distinct advantage of connecting the dots between the ERP, our technology platform, and every single line of business that SAP supports. So from CX to HXM to intelligent spend management, how it all comes back to the core, and how we can help businesses do their best.
Cool. That is that you are from morning till you go for sleep, you think in customer benefits.
I always have to think of the values and use cases and how it really does impact my benefits and the personas that are going to benefit from them. Absolutely.
I honestly love this and embrace this. This is a fantastic role and a hell of a job to do. So on one side, cool that you are driving things forward, and a challenge on the other.
Absolutely.
And then
Ralph really missed his cards last time.
Especially when I was set silent as I made funny noises with my mic. Those were my helping toys and tools to express myself a bit and interfere. What is really cool in that role is that you have a lot of data which is coming together, creates value, or creates a dilemma, such as the title of the show today. I was asking myself when I first thought through, without reading through our talking points and potential aspects of the talk, that I always have a love and hate relationship with data and its accuracy. And then comes my next high love relationship, such as compliance. How do we get what we have collected with such hard work and with such mean, partly attitudes, and grab it. And then we are no longer allowed to use it.
See, that's what you get for being so difficult about the data.
Mhm.
You try too hard, you get cut off.
Yeah, that is one thing. The other is how to have a set of information and guidance in these fantastic opportunities where you melt such values in data and information together to get accuracy done, to get the privacy ruled and kept compliant to different territories. Because in the US, it's for me more or less laissez-faire. They really don't care what they do with people's data, aside of California, which is more or less in the area as strong as European. But I haven't a clue how Asia, for instance, is driving that. So after I chased you in that area a bit, I would love to learn a bit about your perspective and your experience on that.
Sure. Yeah,
No
let's
pressure.
jump in. I mean, from my perspective, so when I joined Gigia, we were an identity-based organization. And the difference became what really drove the adoption of the identity solution was in 2018 GDPR. So starting to think about what data privacy really meant to organizations. And those 99 articles, the hundreds of pages of documentation spoke about different layers of data security, data privacy, data residency. But there were 9 unique articles that spoke about the fact around what do you do with customer data? How do you think about it? What's the transparency of it? How do you create the relationship, whether it was cookie consent? How do you actually get data, get to the term zero or first party data and stop using third party data and start to move to a consent-based, putting the customer in control of their data and their experience? Because I think it comes down to what do you really want out of your customer experience? So you mentioned, of course, the US doesn't want to treat people in a specific way, or you're not familiar with maybe all the regulations of what's happening in Southeast Asia. The challenge is, I think, for global organizations are, do you really want to create silos in terms of how you think about your data strategy? So as a global CIO, they probably would like it to be easier to think about it the exact same across the globe. Of course, there are nuances in how people want to be treated, but I would think if you were a world traveler, you would want your relationship with a global organization to be the same, whether you're sitting in Germany or whether you have flown back to the US or you're traveling to Southeast Asia. And then why would you segregate your population and how you treat them in a very different way? Why would you treat one area of your population in a different way than another? So why wouldn't you put respect first and build and foster transparency of how you're going to management to build and engender trustworthiness across the ecosystem?
Okay.
Yeah. Certainly,
That's a good
if you
one.
don't have that, there's no place to grow from if you haven't established that trust.
Well,
Yeah, you have to establish trust. I think that's the foundation of what a business is in business for, to create a customer and ultimately to retain that customer and grow that customer base. But I also think it's that brand promise is one piece, but how do you continue to do it over time? We talk about loyalty, we talk about advocacy, but how you treat their data has been front and center in everyone's minds. And I can tell you, when my father and my mom asked me those questions, it's mainstream when 80-year-old individuals from Indiana are asking you about this stuff. Wow. It's front and center in their minds now.
that is a statement such as the one about the global experience. If you are working with a global brand, the first thing which came to my mind was a global burger chain with an M in its name. And they love to deliver you worldwide product brands you recognize, but the local approach is, for instance, that in France, if you order a dedicated burger, you get it with a complete different spicy mustard, French taste. So the first bite is a real surprise. Yeah. But aside of that, it is a global experience, such as if you order a dedicated menu, it is always a drink, French fries, the burger, and it's getting healthier these days. Out of that, good example for the expectation of the customers. How do you create the data in a consistent manner, such as I probably am a teaser and I'm a bit provocative on how Americas are treating data and how careful and they value privacy or special personal rights. But probably you can adjust my prejudices on this.
I mean, part of me was biased for a very long time because of GDPR. It was all around, when you collect information from a customer, you need a consent record for it. So you know where you got it, when you got it, how you can use it, and how you use it to deliver an experience. But when you take a moment back to reflect on what a business is doing and what is the benefit for them, that understanding their customer helps them in multiple ways. Obviously, the first one that we speak about on the marketing and customer experience side is personalization. What can you do to personalize the experience, whether it's in the app, on the website, in the restaurant, at the point of sale perspective? How much are you able to show that you know about them to be able to deliver that?
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, as you begin to think deeper about your customer base and you do segment, we all do, we put them in various buckets, we enrich that data to understand, then it becomes the analytics side of the house in terms of how are you thinking about what services are you going to provide? What type of mustard are you going to put on in France? You mentioned the spicy mustard. Well, I'm a big wings fan, so I'd be great with that. However, some people may not. Maybe there's a preference that you ask ahead of time, so it's not a default to put that on, or it's not part of the suggestion. You can also start to understand, and I think as we look at right now, understanding the demand side of the equation as it relates to the supply side, so we get back to profitable growth. We've seen companies right now in the past with this unbridled a customer acquisition side of the house to grow. That was the way that the stock markets reflected positivity. Now, profits are what's going to help drive that. Organizations have to balance both their costs as well as their customer needs to get that equation back in balance. How would you do that without understanding the data behind who is your customer and what you can do with them, how you're going to treat them, but the operations side of the business in terms of what products you're going to bring to market, how are you going to staff your employees to do that, how are you training them, how do you connect all of these dots together so when things go right, you can celebrate it, but invariably things will ultimately go wrong. How do you resolve that in a cost-effective way?
Yeah, and when profit is that clear, overwhelming driving motive, doesn't that create more of a temptation to undermine all these great regulations that we've now come up with?
It's an interesting part. If you ask and survey marketers, were they pro GDPR? Were they happy to eliminate the large size of databases they had? Most of them most likely would say no, because they were very comfortable to report back to the board that they had, millions of customers and they had millions of engaged contacts and they had millions of people in their pipeline. But going back to the ethos that was ExactTarget, it was about subscribers rule. It was about the one-to-one communication, and it wasn't about the list size, but it was about the engagement that you were driving with the respective customer. So you could say I have 1 million customers, of which 99% give you $0. Or you could say, I have 200,000 customers and 90% of them give you money. I know it's a different set of math, but I think it's what we as society, going back to the data question, which is the more accurate equation that you want to present back to the board? Which is the one that really shows the value of your roles and how you're thinking about your business and how you structure the operations of it? I think that's the other point is how can you bring predictability to your business?
Chaka. There we go. How you do it?
Yeah, we're taking notes, man.
We're taking notes. Oh, we're not going to have a discussion. On the hot seat.
Yeah.
All right.
How,
all
how do
answers
you
have
do
to come
it?
from me now. Here we go.
You know, we are consultants. We
Here we
have
go.
no idea how to do it. So we ask you and learn fast.
Well, it speaks to the point of, what are businesses trying to do and how are they working through this? And when I think of, how businesses evolved and SAP is now entering its 51st year, you have to think around as technology came about, how we have shifted from the mainframe side of the house to the PC era of technologies with servers to the cloud and edge. Understanding the dynamics of how IT organizations have evolved, how computers and technology have evolved, and what is software's real role in all of this?
Yeah.
What is software's point is to not necessarily just do the work, but it's to make the human experience better for employees and customers. Right now, I'll go back to an example. My mother is facing a lot with, her age, but the technology sometimes gets in the way. When she calls into something, it's telling her, "Oh, you can only do that through a mobile app." Well, if you've got a 6-inch iPhone and there's no way to help somebody through this experience, of course, that becomes difficult. And when some of these are life critical services, they're not just, "Hey, I need to order another burger." It becomes frustrating in that way.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you go back to the experience, but back to the point of how old these organizations are and how this technology plays in, it's the conversation around what is the digital transformation and what is that for? And a lot of people use that buzzword of digital transformation to mean let's just digitize what we have done. They forget the word transform.
Yeah. Aha. Good
They
one.
forget the transformation part.
Well, there are also 3 terms, right? One is digitize, then there's digitalize, and then there's the digitalize together with transform, right? That's 3 different steps, isn't it?
There are a lot. And I think it also speaks to the maturity and once again, it comes back to what the business is trying to really do. And as they reflect on the capability, who's driving the transformation and what does it really rely on? As you said, when you think about the capabilities that you need inside of an organization, we're all trying to think about the skills we need, but what does it mean when you're trying to become more digital? What does it mean when you're trying to put things into in a data context, in a data world? When you think about the different technologies that you're going to homegrown as well as, you're going to buy off of the shelf, what are the data platforms? Who are the data engineers? How are you going to deploy this technology? How are you going to make sure that it's giving back? And then what's the organizational and technological architecture that you have to put in place? A lot of people I digitized this form. I digitized a process. I created a mobile app. But did I actually move things forward? Did I rethink the way that my business was going to deliver? And do I have the skills and the humans that actually can understand what's happening? Have I skilled them up in a way to look at my organization and reflect upon what is the best way to deliver what I'm doing today? And how do I create separation for my business 10 years down the line?
How does data help there?
Yeah.
How does data help?
Or disturb?
I think it's a little
convinced
of
it can
both.
disturb as well.
Well, it comes back to, do you have the skill set in your organization to reflectively think about this? Data is the lifeblood of all of this. We hear about it. It's everywhere now. It's in the platform layer. It's in the application layer. It's what tells you what happened when you want to look back. It's what's telling you what to do looking forward. It's how you know what's going on. It's the ones and zeros that make all of this stuff go forward. So when we talk about data, what are we talking about? We're talking about customer data, operational data, experience data. All of it is critical. And I think that's where a well-skilled CIO working with their departmental counterparts to make it clear what they're trying to accomplish and get back to that prioritization.
The digital transformation, and as Thomas sliced and diced the 3 areas of thinking, and especially thinking to transform. And you talked about the people, have I skilled them? is it not also a very important aspect to see not only the people, but also the customers where you want to do that transformation for, and to ask them as well for before transforming a process or something like that?
Absolutely. I mean, having a relationship with your customer is always critical to understand what they're doing, where they are, and where they're going. And the more you understand what your customers are going for from a demographic perspective, it's critical. We can talk, I think, when I reflect upon it, my daughter right now, people that are entering high school, they've all grown up and have lived in the internet world with a mobile first technology. So if they're your primary customer, digital is exactly where you have to go. We can look at the laundry list of brands right now that we all hold with the highest regard in relation to customer experience, user experience, interaction design, and they all think about principles around security, agility, and ease of use. We use this way to say, I'm improving the experience because I understand my customer. I'm able to develop faster, deploy things quickly, and continually innovate for them. But at the end of the day, digital is still a tool. It is still a way to solve the human psychological needs that we have. So when you think about all of what we're talking about, it's what is the fundamental problem we're solving, and where are we in that journey to deliver those services to our customers? And which customer base are we addressing? And it comes down to hard trade-offs sometimes when you think about, am I catering to the millennial right now? Am I catering to Gen Alpha? Am I catering to the baby boomers? And how they use technology and perceive it is critical. And making sure that as you profitably grow, which ones are you prioritizing, and that you're making willful trade-offs? Because at the end of the day, the platform and the data needs to be made available through APIs. That you need to make sure that you have a common data model, that you're making it available. What's needed at the different applications to make their decisions and deliver those experiences. Because not every data needs to be everywhere. And that's a very hard thing to have those conversations, because data movement has a cost. Data storage has a cost. Yes, it's getting cheaper. However, it still has a cost. And as data lives in silos, we know that they won't go away. We know that as businesses grow, as they acquire, there will always be data silos. There will be data lag. There will never be 100% perfect view of the truth. However, if you have that understanding, the ability to move this information and make it available when you need it can help you understand how to architect your solution, educate your staff, and deliver those customer experiences.
Sounds quite easy theoretically. Why doesn't it work then? Oftentimes, I don't say that it never works.
Who do we blame?
I think it goes back to the speed of which we're transforming. So technology has evolved in a way that anchors people the way things work. When I think around where and how I grew up, I saw things that were broken and that engineers and teams work to fix it. We live in a society where you can point to what perfect kind of looks like a lot more than not. And everyone holds them as gold standards. However, they're not always the end all be all of how things get done, because businesses still have a lot of systems on premise. They have a lot of systems on legacy code. Not everyone is always on the cloud. And these hybrid environments, these transforming environments, they still have to run their business. And as you say, it's not easy to do that. You have to also think about the sequence at which you're going to prioritize these changes, because not everything can be. If you start in a digital greenfield, you can point to those companies, as I said, that grew up purely in the digital age, that have grown faster, that have an advantage. However, their value was based upon, monthly access users, average users, and time on page. It wasn't, how many facilities you manufacture in, how many units do you actually own? And when a company like Airbnb outpaces a company like Marriott, what's the value in which we're looking at the world, and what are the lenses? Now, a Marriott can close the gap by investing in their technology landscape to complement their property landscape and what they're able to do. But they have to reinvent what they're doing.
So earlier you said something that I now literally, no, not literally translate into a metaphor is like data is the crude oil of a digital transformation. So it's basically whatever's behind it. Now, Andreas,
how do you
is quite
refine
right.
it? How do you understand it? How do you synthesize it? Sure.
Now, Andreas is quite right here. So just from a technical point of view, it can't be anywhere, and it is siloed.
That's right.
And well, the silos to offer good services need to get broken, or to be able to transform oneself into a better self. Those silos need to get broken. So now the data can't be everywhere. The data, as we have silos and data can't be everywhere, we have notoriously disjointed data, means the similar data points everywhere. Ratul in system A, Ratul in system B, Thomas in system C and D, and all have different, partly conflicting views on me, especially the conflicting views on us. These are the difficult ones. So how can a company that does wish to become a better self,
who does not wish
transform that? Pardon me? How can they overcome this in using this all dilemmas?
You know, there are technologies that can bridge the gap. So when we think about the digital transformation, it is what are you doing? So from the core, if you're digitizing your ERP, there are ways to manage this. When you're thinking about your customer experience, a customer data platform can bridge the gap between multiple silos and areas and keep things segregated. And to the parent side of the organization, you could get a single view for analytics, for planning, for segmentation. For in the moment, the regions and the brands can maintain their autonomy to have you as Tom in one system, you as Thomas in another, your records based upon interactions can be kept siloed. But it should be ultimately up to you, and the company has to make a decision. Is that one they are going to allow the customer to be a part of? And that's the tricky part, is when you do this, what is the why you're doing it?
Yeah. Now, challenging you, I know you're a CDP guy. Yeah. Well, you said it earlier, you have been the ones, or your team brought it to market, at least the SAP version of it. So
thank you. I did not bring every CDP to market. I think we
I don't want
problem
to make you
with
more
me claiming that.
Well,
You could be happily retired
if you did that, if we make you that famous, you probably need to eat some more spicy chicken wings.
Yeah,
very spicy ones.
Different claims to fame.
What I want to get into actually is now there's a tendency of marking a CDP as the silver bullet. Yeah. So now I'm looking at the typical companies that I work with. They have between one and many marketing engagement systems. They have a service system, and they have a sales system plus their ERP. So, and they have a big time analytics system. So now all of these systems, especially the marketing and the analytics systems, are capable of the unification aspect, so the core aspect of a CDP.
Yeah.
The question then is, why the heck should I buy one more?
It's a great question when you think about how a lot of the technologies have evolved, that many of them had to unify data. It was an essential part. I mean, even an email service provider, you had to know who you were sending it to. So what's all the data around it? So you could build and personalize the email. You could put them into different journeys. And what were those journeys for? Were they marketing journeys, or were they actual customer journeys? How you interacted between an email system to a website at the early time, right? This is where the big parts, Adobe integrated with many different ESPs.
Yeah.
And over time, then it became the commerce-driven experience. How are you going to actually sell something to someone?
Yeah.
Not just about getting them to your door, but how do you track that? And every single one of these systems, as you say, had to have a view of the customer. Every one of them had a different set of data. So if you just signed up for the email, you could use your name, Thomas. If you came in through to actually purchase something, now you go by Tom. What's the actual record? And then how do you appear on the back end? So you've got data warehouses that are chunking a lot of this information. A lot of businesses have come out to do just that, help with the analytics and stand this up. But the difference between a CDP and a lot of these are, how do you have a common model between all of them? How could you start to harmonize this information to create that common layer of identity, consent, and what are you going to do with it? And then how do you action it in the moment? So as things change from one system, those systems were not often designed to, while they unify data within themselves, they were not designed to force the applications to take that information or context across to other applications.
Okay, then let's add an MDM system in the mix.
So an MDM system is not always designed to be real time. So I think once again, it comes down to the use case you're trying to design, and what data survives and what data lives in each system. Because there are purposes. And I think it does come down to, what is your landscape and what are you trying to accomplish? Because not every company can use the same tech landscape. It's, how are you building what is your distinct advantage? And making sure you understand that. So is your distinct advantage an IT stack that is just a me too, it's there, it's for security, it's for compliance, or is it something that you are using as your advantage? So do CIOs come to the table now, again, as we change and transform, to be able to say, your IT investment is not just about compliance, but it is about unlocking innovation in your business. Do your businesses need to do this? Because it's not always, the customer experience is not just about the customer facing technologies, but how the business puts the customer into the equation. How I'm going to actually use demand to forecast supply, to maybe rethink some things. And that's where I think you go back to the reason for digital transformation. What is the architecture for which you are building forward your digital strategies?
And how do you do that without clean enough data? If
You
there is
always
such a
need-
thing as clean data.
Ta-ta! There we go.
Oh, absolutely.
Our dear friend of the show, Michael Wu, says you cannot have clean data, just as an editor will tell you there's no way you're going to get clean copy. There's always something wrong somewhere.
And unfortunately, there is another one, such as I'm so grateful that you gave us several clues, and Marshall came to the data quality issue. And I'm always asking myself, as a big data quality fan and searcher for data quality, how do I keep, after it has been in a much effort driven and costly exercise, being cleaned, aligned? How do we keep it clean? How do we motivate the individuals at the keyboard looking into the screen to be motivated? And how do we motivate them to keep it clean?
You know, one of my favorite customers, he was the head of information security at the time, but then he became the CIO. And when we were doing a webcast a few months back, I asked him, how did you start this transition at your organization to become more data-driven? And his conversation went like this. When I first joined, my job was head of security. So I went around to all the different areas and lines of business leaders and technology leaders to find out where and how, where they got their data, how they were using their data. And a lot of marketers had a lot of what he claimed to be garbage party data. They don't know where they got it. They don't know when they got it. They don't know how they were using it, but it was keeping the lights on for their business. Now he's going to place the hard truth of, we're just throwing all of this away, but then the business stops. And so it has to be a conversation. It has to be a negotiation of how you start to move things toward this end goal. Just like a digital transformation, you have to go through a data transformation. You have to start to have those hard trade-offs, because everything has a cost, as we said. So when we talk about that, that cost cannot be undone.
Mhm.
I think there's a comment in the chat here around, CDPs are another silo. They
Yep.
become another silo. Any technology can become another silo if you architect it that way. You have to make sure that as you bring forward your information architecture, that you don't let it become a silo. There will be silos, data privacy silos, business applications will move faster than the back end. What pieces of data need to not be part of a silo? That's where you have to have that conversation. And that's where you have to invest and spend more dollars to make that available in real time using those APIs. It comes down to the common data model. It comes down to having context of where you got that,
Mhm.
how you're allowed to use it, and how you'll put it forward into your front-facing applications, your analytics applications, your processing engines to be able to do all of those things.
Which, okay, you first.
Question from
You first.
How does it look like a not so rich enterprise? I'm having a big heart for the small, medium enterprises.
Mhm.
So that overall data silo, CDPs, data lakes, that's very much enterprise approach.
Sure.
But the basics, if they happen even at the mom and pop shop, yeah, the moment you have too much customers, for instance, online to serve, and not seeing them face to face again or regularly, things are changing. Can they afford this? Can they have a smart benefit of that as well? The digital transformation as one topic. And
Hopefully, brilliant consultants like the three of you get to come in and help those individuals. This is where you guys get to you get to flex your muscle.
This adds more dollars on top of the dollars that you just mentioned.
Oh, but then
Which
you
they
save
don't
them.
have.
Then you help them beat up the vendor. Your job's to come in and get a discount to offset your price.
Okay.
Well, complexity is an interesting question.
Yeah.
As a lot of enterprises look at it, they have a lot of legacy systems. They have a lot to manage on-prem, hybrid, private cloud, public cloud. Potentially, the ease of the mid-market, maybe they already have a streamlined ecosystem, that they don't have as many or as much legacy tech and debt that they have to process.
Mhm.
While they have smaller budgets, as you say,
Yeah.
because of course, if you look at the sizes of the budgets, be just carte blanche, of course. And where are they going to be investing? Are they investing as much in security as a large enterprise would that has a much larger surface area of attack?
No, they
Are
don't.
they going to have to manage countless apps in languages and for different bases that a mid-market may not have to? And their advantage in mid-market is agility. So when you think about agility being the first leg of their advantage, what helps them keep that advantage? So I go back to what is the core ethos for being? How are you delivering that? And what is the way you prioritize and break up your budgets? Data will always be critical to all of these calculations. And how are they making sure they're staying fruitful to their prioritization and focus of that?
Now,
Because every mid-markets company is to one day close their eyes and wake up and be a very large enterprise. I don't think most people who start off say, hey, I'm going to do this, and once I get my 100th customer, I'm done. Like, no, they don't do that. That's not how it works.
and we wish them well.
I would like to only have this. No,
Yeah.
their growth, they always have some kind of exit strategy, whether it's an IPO or to be acquired or to continually to grow and become the next whatever.
Amazon.
Trust me, Ratul. I love to draw signs close due to richdom. Yeah, I'm most happy to do so.
But let's look at the data angle. Well, at data from another angle. So, if we are increasingly looking at customers as sets of data points, in how far do we start to dehumanize them? Is there? Well, there is a risk, but how to work with that one?
It's a wonderful question given what's happening right now in the AI world. So when we hear it, you think about a lot of people are like, what is AI? What does it actually do for me?
Uh-huh.
Of course, when you think about going back to my engineering days, we used to call this just fuzzy logic. And what did that really mean? Well, you need a large data set. You need the computational power to actually compute these things, find it, do the regression analysis, and bring this forward. It was all based on data. The way that all of this has evolved has always become technology evolves faster than regulations can keep up. And what you're asking about is, how do we prevent ourselves from hurting ourselves?
Yeah.
You are, because at the end of the day, the parallel I'll give you is right now, they're asking, should they ban cell phone usage in high schools? I could not imagine, when I reflect when I went to high school in the early 90s, we were not allowed to bring Walkmans, cassette players, CD players, nothing, no pagers, none of it. It was not allowed. And now to think that the pendulum has moved full focus, that you have to have this mobile device and it's almost impossible to ban it. The history is littered with how technology has come in and we hurt, we help or hurt each other. It's always the case that we will be behind the times. I mean, data privacy came out after all of the stuff went wrong. I do not believe, of course, the pundits are all working to come up with ways to regulate this, but they're going to regulate it in a way that obviously monetizes it well for themselves and keeps people out.
Well, yeah.
But who is representing the politicians are supposed to be representing the masses, but they may not be the most educated in the space. And they're not going to slow down innovation at the cost of limiting growth, tax dollars, innovation, and initiatives that lead to geographical advantages for their own countries.
Right. And reflecting that back to corporations who represents the customer there. There is the idea of the chief customer officer, but I don't know that they've really caught on quite the way they should.
It's an interesting one with a chief customer officer. Let's dive into that. So the use of AI in an organization. Let's not talk about maybe the generative, but there is the how is it actually benefiting a process? How is it bringing forward? And then there's the conversation of, okay, is the data set biased? Is the data set incorrect? How does it go? What data set are we actually using to train the model? So as the AI predicts. And for a subset of the population, they'll probably think it's great. They'll think it's faster. They'll think it benefits them. But what is the reality when you measure what better is? To an organization, it most likely would be profitable growth. It would be, how is the operational efficiency? How did I do better year over year? Am I able to return value back to my shareholders, stockholders, XYZ, the customer itself? It's only until 5 to 10 years later when they realize, okay, we didn't do this correctly.
Hindsight.
When did we pollute the lake that we thought was helping us clean our factory?
Boom.
And then it may be too late and you have to move locations and start over again.
Yeah. So how to identify that early? I mean,
it's a hard one. Can humanity, this is a psychological question, not a technology. Can humanity actually sacrifice the short-term benefits for the long-term success? And that is a hard one for just humanity in general, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to go eat those spicy chicken wings later because I'm going to sacrifice my waistline because it's my smiles that'll come out.
Well, and if you're a stock investor, you probably want the spices right now, right? and lots of them.
You do. You're looking for the hockey sticks. I think we've all been trained, and it's kind of how we were wired. You're asking, how can we undo years of evolution by saying, how do I take a pause, slow down, and actually think what's going to benefit the future?
Yeah, every time this topic comes up, I'm reminded of The Matrix and Agent Smith pointing out that humanity is a virus. The way we take advantage of an area until it has been cleaned out and then move on.
And my
We need to
favorite is Colossus, not Agent Smith, but the old movie where the two gigantic mainframe AI systems battle themselves and then decide what's disturbing are the humans here. So
Yeah.
let's get rid of them. And everything is safe. Because what you, in another thought model, brought with the polluted lake in data pollution instead of real pollution as an example, that is exactly what you phrased at the humanity question, such as we as humans have to ask ourselves if we are too greedy and too benefit focused for our own. We give a lot away on the future, not for the mainstream folks, but if you have kids, for your kids and their kids.
Yeah.
And that we help organizations with technology to even have some more time to think more thoughtfully on how to produce their services and their products sustainable. That was something on the examples I very much liked in one of the earlier days in an SAP show when they showed the manufacturing process of water bottles and how they did it in a sustainable way. Yeah. Unfortunately, I never get one of these Scandinavian water bottles.
Begging for swags again?
No, that was something really cool, such as they had a customer case where they produced the water bottles and they showed you how much they serve due to smartness of utilizing SAP's technology and thoughtful thinking and AI in a combination of the product manufacturing process and the sourcing of the detailed products. And such is in the global role you have now and bringing all the stuff together, I see that as a fantastic opportunity to help organizations there as well.
Sustainability is one of my 3 pillars. So understanding exactly how that works in the future is critical. I am just beginning to wrap my head around how those KPIs should be built, because when you talk about the sustainability, let's go with the water bottle example. Plastic water bottles rose to fame very quickly because they were selling on convenience. They weren't selling water, they were selling convenience. People traded their cash for convenience. And these water bottles are everywhere. And then the rise of those plastic water bottles that were reusable. And everyone took a step back because now those plastic water bottles had BPA in it. So they weren't necessarily safer for us. They were potentially safer for the environment because you're using reusable water bottles, but now they're poisoning the human body because of the chemicals that were actually in the water bottle. Now, the rise of the metal water bottles and the reusable ones. Well, I was a Boy Scout. We used to call these just canteen water bottles, right? This was the thing. Now they're back and trendy again. How many of them do you need? And there are tons of them. So when you think about what's reusable, how many of these water bottles? They come in, you've got 2 sitting there. Costco sells them in packs of like 10. Then every company wants to put their logo on it. They want to hand them out. So now I don't have 1,000 plastic bottles, but I have 100 metal water bottles. So what does all of that cost? I do. I mean, I have kids that want some. We have versions from Major League sports teams. We have versions from places we've been on vacation. The ones we've had at companies.
Yeah, they never stop.
They don't stop. So you do end up. So how many do you need? And of course, the sustainability piece is, of course, how effective can you be in your processes? How do you think about your supply chains? How are you actually going to serve your customer? How do you handle the initial delivery, the returns? All of those comes into a way to, and how do you do it in a way to track the carbon credits? Of course, SAP is looking at it from the same way that we track dollars. How do you track it all the way through? But we have to start to see how that value actually comes back to the shareholders and how it comes back. Because right now, everything is still based upon the amount of dollars you take in and how profitable you can do it. And when that becomes a tracking mechanism or something that is a piece that differentiates how businesses run and starts to be a brand differentiator and not a marketing tagline, because we've seen greenwashing. We have seen the way that people just use labels. Hey, this is organic, or this is good for you. I don't know how many things I remember as a child that my aunts would say, this was good for you, that was later proven not. And things that were not were. And it only comes over time. And that's one of the benefits of hindsight.
I love that statement from the LinkedIn user.
We started off with AI and how to use AI, how to make sure that it helps, that it actually helps. And what
that goes back to stats class. What is the difference? What is the quantitative help versus the qualitative help?
Yes.
You know, what does help mean? I'm trying to explain this to my daughter right now when we talk about, let's go with something as simple as temperature. If I tell you it's 70 degrees outside, that is a fact. But is that warm or cold? What do you need with it? Do you need a jacket, or is this sunscreen weather? All of those things are quantitative in relation to that. And it's the same with what is help, what is the over-deliver, the under-deliver, the promise. Every human will interpret that differently. Did it meet its expectation? Well, we don't often spend a lot of time with every single person explicitly talking about what those expectations are. Because to me, I'm okay with a call dropping. I'll tell you, my mom is not. I'm okay with it because I went to school to realize how complex it is, and I just moved on with my life. She wants to spend more time debating why some carrier let her down.
Yeah, no, it's not. Getting back to that statement, so it's not all statistics. So it's about delivering to promise. Yeah. So Thomas LLC, would like to transform myself digitally. So now Ratul AG comes along and says, hey, I got my predictive model here. It's full machine learning and fully artificial intelligent. It's almost a Terminator. No, well, almost, because, well, we are not fully do not fully want to get there. We want to have it helpful instead of killing my business. So how can I, as a business, understand understand that this model actually will help me, or that this tool actually will help me, before I use it with the effect that you already said before? So, well, didn't help. Because it was too biased, it was too whatever.
This is where you have to kind of think back and trust your team to help you ask the right questions, in the sense of, what are you trying to accomplish? I think at the end of the day, it always starts out, what's your actual vision and goal, and what do you need to get there? And AI is, once again, another tool. It's a tool that humanity has created to make things better. And I always love that everybody goes to AI being this eventual Terminator. How come the majority of us do not go with the fact that it could just become C-3PO?
Or R2-D2. Yeah?
Well, I'm hoping my AI will at least be able to talk to me without ones and zeros beeping. Like I want to be able to converse with
it. Better. Yeah, I agree.
But the point is, we always go with the negative. That if we don't figure this out, it will lead down to the path of a Skynet, as opposed to.
And it does. Let me interrupt. Sorry.
Sure.
I am just preparing for a sailing trip from Cape Finisterre, northwestern Spain, to Portsmouth. Yeah. So now these are waters that are uncharted for me. So I haven't been there since '86.
Sure.
And then on a bigger boat. So now, with all the hype around generative AI and me finally having an OpenAI account, I thought I can put these $20 to good use for this month and ask them, what the hell in navigational charts would I need? Sorry. Yeah. Well, guess what I got back? If I
for your $20, you got back a really well thought out answer.
Yeah, well, starting with a bunch of disclaimers and then with the wrong charts.
Oof. Yeah.
They were on the wrong side of the Atlantic.
Wrong Port Smith.
So I asked all the right questions.
Well, it's still about, once
Wow.
again, it's a tool. And how is it configured to work? And just because it exists doesn't mean it's going to work correctly. I reflect back to when Watson was on Jeopardy, and they gave you 3 different answers, and they gave you probabilities of correctness. They weren't always correct. And I think that's where humanity in itself always thinks technology is perfect. Like, we are not okay with the call dropping unless you're in the technology to say, okay, I forgive it because I know how it's programmed. I know how it works. I know that there's an error factor. There will always be an error factor. But the majority of people who have never had to sweat the engineering life, you have to think about how these things actually come together. They don't they always think it's perfect. That if it doesn't work, it didn't hit the expectation. It reminds me back to being a product manager where people, my answer was, they're when I would ask the question, they were saying it works as designed, and I would say,
Thank
no,
you.
that's a bug.
Exactly. Humans have made the core programs. And if you then have the distinction between female programmers and male programmers, you see a lot of code which is a lot less faulty with female programmers if you did the analysis, but they do not use so many. And now go for a system which has been programmed from white programmers and let them utilize the system in jurisdiction and in a sentence where a judge is looking help to judge over a black person. Those are examples I took from a podcast in Germany, which is now 5 years old, where they just analyzed that the programming in itself, as you said, it will deliver what it is designed for, and do not over expect for, in that case, the hype, the $20, and not smashing result in the positive way. Such there it is a clear proof with all the knowledge you have, Thomas. It did not give you the guidance you were expecting, which is unfortunate. And hopefully you have a workaround found now.
Yeah, it's called Google.
Well,
In that case, guidance is literal.
But still, no. So this is not the point. Also, the $20 are not the point. The point is, if I hire a technology to solve a problem, I bloody expect that it's at least partially right. So now back to LinkedIn user's question, who is quite a knowledgeable person, by the way, as person chooses to be anonymous. I won't name person. We are in a hype. So I ask all the right questions, and then comes vendor, call him evil vendor, and promises the hell. No, not the hell. Well, promises like hell and earth. Actually, heaven and earth is the word. So, and I ask the right question, and they smilingly say, "Can do it. Have done it here. Lots of success stories. This and that and whatnot." I believe it, and
I put it.
Then I end up on the rocks around Ashend, which is quite a bad area. So how will I be able to early understand as a business that, well, this smiling face, which may be an avatar as well, thanks to deep fakes, is blatantly taking advantage of me?
Do I follow
It's an interesting question you asked, because you said, I expect the technology to work.
No, I thought of work.
Well,
that's what I said.
but even now, because more times than not, the computers work, the technology works.
Yeah.
Go back to like the early 80s and 90s. How many times did the computer not work? I can still remember the dial-up days that I could not get a connection to my bulletin board, and I moved on with my life. But today, if the internet is not at full speed, we're on the phone complaining about it. It's gotten more complex than we expect it to work, way more than it should, and we're happy when it does. And I think those are so that's the human side of it, that we have to reset what really is an expectation. we're in the early hype cycle of a lot of this technology.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other part. Vendors have to do their due diligence around the QA process. I think I heard a CTO talk about, of course, generative AI can create code, but so can programmers. But a lot of people forget that you have to run that through the QA cycle. You have to put that through the rigor of stress testing it and putting it through the security protocols and making sure that it doesn't have workarounds and it does deliver. Just because all of these things, and we know the version, we forget that we're in version 1 of a lot of these things. And I think we have to
take our
remember
hands
that
off the
sometimes
wheel
version
yet.
3 to version 5 is where it really starts to solidify. But we have to get there together. So I think a lot of these smiling faces, while they're promising the world, the smiling face on the other side should understand where we are in the journey and say, look, we're going to trial this out. We're going to try it in these environments, and we're going to do this together. And we're going to shape the future together. And I'm going to hold you accountable, and you're going to hold me accountable. But together, we're going to create a better future.
It's trust but verify. Yeah.
That's right. Always trust but verify.
So now, this is it's all exciting, and we could go on for hours on end.
Good, always.
Yeah, we're having a good one here.
Unluckily, we are on the top of the hour, and I bet that you too got some work to do. Knowing your employer. So it's not a bad employer, but still they're not a charity either.
No, they're not. So and I think all of you know my new leaders, so I hope you don't send them emails saying Ratul spent an hour of work not working. So,
so we usually close this down with a question for famous last words, which are not made in the terminal sense, but in the sense of terminating the session.
Something you want to
not terminating the guest. So what I'd be interested in is, as we are mainly about data in the context of digital transformation, is how do you see digital transformations going on in a sense, well, in a way, in a blurred world, basically? What are the next steps? What's the next big thing? Maybe easier.
The next big thing? Oh, I think that one's harder. I think the next steps for a lot of these organizations are it comes to leadership. I think the board of directors and the CEO and their C-suite need to really embrace this topic and think about why they're transforming and what they're doing and what is the next evolution of their business, and have a real difficult discussion around what are they going to do and how they're going to serve their organizations going forward, and how data is a part of it. So as the CEO or the chairman start to present this topic, CIOs need to take the lead around exactly what an organization needs to do and where they are in this maturity scale. I don't think, and how much money it will take to move in different areas. You have to reflect and take a holistic stance around how you're going to transform your organization and what's first. It takes tremendous leadership to make these very difficult decisions. They've got to come from the top. They need the support of the board. They need to also be very clear, like you said. They may have errors. There might be missteps. The North Star needs to remain, but the path to get there may have challenges, and they need to give them the space to, as let's call it A/B test, but to fail, to fail forward, to always learn and step on the experiences that you have to move you closer to your ultimate goal. Because we have seen the success stories of how people continue to reinvent themselves and keep coming back. But the ones that fail to grow. And I'll leave you with that.
Great stuff. I love how you always bring it back to the human level.
It has to be.
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah, I love it. I really love it. Yeah.
Totally agree. And you did a fantastic conversation with us.
Thank you for having me.
Serving the organization you work for, they could be pleased with what you delivered for brilliant thoughts and statements, and how things work together and play together. So fantastic investment. Love to have you back again.
It better be.
Please.
So thanks heaps. We are going backstage now in a second and are looking forward for to next week when we have Laurie McCabe and are talking about technology again in a business. The impact of AI on SMBs, which is quite an exciting topic as well. Has lots to do with leadership too, by the way.
Love it.
Okay. Thanks. Bye, everybody.